It won't come as a vast surprise that the heir to the throne holds a lot of opinions about a lot of things. Indeed, many of them have been openly and frankly expressed, many others simply leaked. This week, the Attorney-General explained his reasons for not publishing letters from the Prince to Tony Blair's government. Well, tonight we asked one of the Prince's closest aides for decades if political neutrality in a monarch actually matters. Jim Reid reports.
It could be decades away, but at some point we will see a different face on our stamps and banknotes. What do we know about the future King Charles III, about his political views, the way he plans to use his power and influence?
My problem is that I can't resist trying to find a way of doing something about many of the problems that I come across. If you want a quieter life, lock me up.
This week, the Attorney-General stepped in to block the publication of 27 of the Prince's memos sent to Labour ministers some years ago. The so-called Black Spider letters, named after his distinctive handwriting, are said to be particularly frank and full of deeply held personal beliefs. But after a 7-year fight by the Guardian newspaper, the full contents will remain secret. That veto overturned a decision last month by a High Court judge. The Attorney-General said the publication of those memos could stop ministers talking openly with the Prince as he prepares to become king, and it could undermine his position of political neutrality. Unofficially, we already know about the Prince's views on a number of subjects. This former special advisor to 2 Labour ministers says he had first-hand experience of some of those letters.
Well, I remember one particular incident from when I was working at the Department for Communities and Local Government. The Secretary of State had given a speech about model communities and had mentioned Poundbury, which is Charles's model village down in Dorset. She was a little bit disparaging about it in a throwaway remark. Now, within a day or two, a handwritten letter arrived into the private office with the fleur-de-lis at the top of this handwritten missive, inviting her to visit Poundbury and to see for herself. And that was an invitation which I believe was taken up quite quickly afterwards. Now, if you or I had written such a letter inviting a Secretary of State to visit our pet scheme, it is very unlikely it would have gone to the top of the pile, and also unlikely that we would have got a visit in the diary quite so fast.
The Prince has, of course, been accused of using his influence to interfere in other areas of public life. In 2009, he wrote to the Qatari owners of this £1 billion housing development in Chelsea, calling for the whole original design to be scrapped. The man behind that design, Lord Rogers, accused the Prince of abusing his power and wrecking 2 years of his work. Then there have been forthright views, publicly expressed or quietly leaked, on topics from hunting to youth unemployment to environmental policies. He says it's his duty to communicate some of those views privately to public officials.
I could have, couldn't I, sat doing very little indeed. And I'd have been got at just as much by people who are saying what a useless idiot he is, you know. What contribution is he making? So, I mean, I'd rather, at the end of the day, if one has to go through all this, be criticised for doing things rather than not doing them, if you see what I mean.
But views are one thing. Critics say some of the Prince's actions look more like direct lobbying designed to change government policy. That, they say, is undemocratic.
I don't think anyone doubts there's anything wrong with Charles having a range of interests, of political views, of campaigning and causes that he cares a great deal about. I think the issue is the secrecy with which he then lobbies on behalf of these various causes and campaigns. The fact that the letters are now, we are told, to be kept secret, and the public will never know whether or not the government changed its mind, whether public money was spent, whether decisions were altered as a result of Charles's lobbying.
A recent change to the law means royal letters written today are even less likely to get into the public domain. So, any more of those private thoughts scrawled in black handwriting are likely to remain just that, private.
Jim Reid there. We can speak now to Dame Julia Cleverden, who's Special Advisor to the Prince's charities. She's worked with the Prince Charles for the last 20 years, and by Nick Cohen, the columnist for The Observer. And thank you both for coming in. And I guess he is clearly a man with plenty of views, and proudly so. Do you think we want an heir to the throne with views?
I think we want an heir to the throne who spent most of the last 35 years trying to understand some of the key issues which face Britain and the communities that he will seek to serve. So I think if we look at his work across an absolute range of issues, whether we're talking youth unemployment or responsible business behaviour or what do we do with 100 redundant hospitals, this man has given his life, actually, to understanding what the issues are
At what
that
point
he
does that
can
become
do.
meddling, do you think?
Well, I mean, you can argue whether it's meddling or mobilising. I would actually suggest that, in fact, most of what the Prince of Wales has done has been to try to mobilise, to make things happen through charities, through the business world, through communities. 7% of all young people who are not in education, employment and training are going through the Prince's Trust this year. That is a real contribution to the nation.
And Nick Cohen, as he said rather endearingly himself, you can call him a useless idiot, but you'd prefer to be somebody that did than didn't.
Well, it depends what you mean by do. Your correspondent didn't quite make it clear. What happened was the Information Commissioner, who fully accepts that Prince Charles's private views and private business should be kept out of the public domain, was looking at direct lobbying of government. And he said the Prince's attempts to say this wasn't political just weren't credible whatsoever. He said they made no sense. These were political, often on past political matters. We know from what Little's leaked has been, for instance, his attacks on the Human Rights Act, Derry Irvine. Although I agree very much with Julia that some of the work he does is fine and is non-political and is very good. Others are pernicious. For example, on alternative health, which is quack medicine, which he is constantly, as far as we know, bombarding the Department of Health to keep homeopathic hospitals open.
I
can't see what the objection is to knowing about this.
I think actually it is absolutely clear that governments of all persuasions have decided that the Queen's letters, the Prince of Wales's letters and the Duke of Cambridge's letters should not be in the public domain, because the ability of those three individuals to be frank, the Prince of Wales does 600 engagements a year, has 8,000...
But he wants to change minds, doesn't he? I mean, that's the point of writing the letter, is to change the minds of those with influence.
Is to take the experience and views that he has picked up as he moves around this country and other countries on the things that he believes are in the interests of Britain. And he has an absolute right, I would have thought, to use that experience to pass that information on, to do where he can, the things he can, to make more difference to Britain.
Do you really think that Tony Blair would have changed a policy on the back of something that Prince Charles wrote to him in a letter?
We're not allowed to know, Emily. That's the first point, and the government has gone to great efforts to make sure we don't know. On the whole, politicians are rather frightened of royals. They're frightened of having an argument with them. They're frightened that the media will take the royal family's side. There was an example this week when Jeremy Hunt makes a perfectly civil comment to the Queen. She and Duke Edward were rather rude to him, and the media is instantly on Jeremy Hunt.
How do you know that?
Well,
talk to David Blunkett, talk to many of the ministers who know the Prince of Wales and worked with him, and they would say that actually they value his views.
You see, Baroness, it's a bit odd for you to support a system...
I'm not a Baroness.
Sorry, forgive me, Dame.
So.
Nothing like one.
Nothing like one.
It's a bit odd for you to support a system of secrecy and then say, well, how do you know that?
I think actually the Prince of Wales is one of the least secret people that there is. He is very frank about what he believes. He makes a fantastic number of speeches. He's founded 20 charities. What more could he do?
Would he publish his views himself? I mean, would he say, I've nothing to hide?
Read the speeches. Read the speeches. They're very clear what the Prince of Wales believes about how we can make a
So he wouldn't have a problem then, presumably. If they're all in the speech, he wouldn't have a problem with them becoming public.
The decision that this is vetoed is a government decision. This is a government responsibility. This is not the Prince of Wales. He didn't take the case.
So forgive me, let's just get this fact on the record, can we?
Yes.
You're saying as one of the Prince of Wales advisors, he'll be happy for these spider letters to be released?
I'm saying that, I have a fantastic number of black spider memos from the Prince of Wales. I had 4 this morning.
There is a very special position, isn't there, that is often talked about, particularly between the monarch herself and the Prime Minister, that whatever goes on in that conversation is intensely private and gives the person in power, the Prime Minister of the day, enormous confidence.
Well,
do you not respect that?
Yes, if you look back at the present Queen when she was the heir to the throne, there is nothing like what has been happening with the Prince of Wales.
She was on the throne at the age of 23.
If you look at the Information Commissioner's website, and I hope your viewers do go and look at it, 'cause it's not just their judgment, they are so concerned about his behaviour, they've produced a 20,000-word history of his political interventions going back to the 1970s. The Prince of Wales himself, please, in an interview with Vanity Fair, he said his parents might have brought him up to stay above politics. He wasn't going to listen to them.
So this is something that Prince Charles does that the Queen would not do?
Well, the Prince of Wales has been the longest-serving Prince of Wales that we have ever had. He has spent most of the last 35 years trying to prepare, to support and understand the things that he can do to mobilise and make a greater difference to the things he believes are important to Britain.
Thank you both so much. I'm sorry we've run out.